Hello, everybody. Now, I'm doing this video to share with you the astrology of the coming days in relation to the tropical cyclone, which is happening in the Northern Rivers and Southern Queensland areas. I was caught up in the last flood myself, and it was very stressful. So I want to do my best to share with you this information and hopefully some practical strategies that will help you to, just to manage the stress and take you through the changing energies of the next few days. Because knowledge is power, and having a look at the astrological symbolism is very helpful. Back when we got flooded, we had no real prior knowledge. It sort of just was an accumulative thing that happened over days, and then suddenly it was all on. I'm really grateful that a lot of people have got this prior warning to prepare and to get out of dangerous areas and to help one another. So let me get to the charts. I'm going to share with you the chart of the here and now moment. Now, this is cast for Brisbane, and this will be relevant to all people up in the Northern Rivers as well. Now, we can see that the moon is at 22 degrees of Gemini, and this moon is just separating from a square to Saturn. Now, Saturn is quite a problematic planet in terms of natural disasters. It has been traditionally connected to flooding. And we see that the moon is moving from Saturn to the square of the nodal axis, this is the south node and the north node, also referred to as the dragon's head and the dragon's tail. The north and south node have a connection to fate and destiny, but they are traditionally an inauspicious alignment. So they can be connected to problems. I was reading a quote from Ptolemy, who is an astrologer from the second century, and he was talking about the bendings of the nodes or the square to the nodes. So I just wanted to share a passage from what he said. He says, if maleficent planets are joined with the luminaries, now Saturn is one of those planets, and the moon is a luminary. Now, so is the sun. The sun is conjunct Saturn, and the moon is separating from a square to Saturn, which is considered to be joined. Then serious dangers such as um, from the falls from heights, collapse of houses. If Saturn prevails, um, collapses or shipwreck. So Saturn, like I said, is traditionally connected to flooding and shipwreck. So I find that this alignment is definitely problematic. And, it's something that we can use to be aware of. Saturn also has connection to fear. So, of course, there's a lot of that going around at the moment. Now, how do we manage this energy? I'm actually going to stop sharing so that we can actually have a face-to-face. So the moon is currently in Gemini. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and Gemini is a sign of flux and change, which is perhaps why we've gone through different iterations with this. It's going to be a category 3, it's going to be category 2, it's going to be category 1. There's a lot of sort of change and versatility to this. I guess the story's not set. Gemini is a mutable sign. Okay, so we have to be aware that the conditions in this are rapidly changing. Now, the fact that Gemini is moving from the square to Saturn to the square to the nodal axis is a red flag period. Now, I'm going to share with you the timing of that, but it's my understanding that this will be an intensification of the current situation. And I just want to share the timing of that with you now. So the moon generally, depending on its speed, will cover about 12 degrees a day. And so we can see there's about 5 degrees separating the moon from the nodal axis here. And so within about, say, 12 hours or less than 12, more like 10 hours, we will see that moon come to the exact square of the nodal axis. Okay, so see the moon is now coming up. It's at 26 degrees of Gemini, and now it is at 27 degrees here, pretty close to an exact square. We go back 1 hour. Oops, a second. Let me just go back a second. Yeah. Okay, so this is about 9 o'clock tonight. Now, we're not going to see necessarily this happening exactly, anything problematic happening exactly at this period, but it's just saying that between now and tonight, we're likely to see an intensification of energies. Now, the other thing is once the moon leaves Gemini, it's going to move into Cancer. Now, Cancer is a sign where the moon is quite strong. And the energy of this period is going to change. So the period between now and late tonight is going to be emotionally driven by, the energy of Gemini, which is, like I said, a mutable planet. It can be strongly affecting our nervous system. We can be very busy in the head, overthinking. It's a really good time to get as much information as possible. Gemini is all about gathering information, building community, ensuring that the lines of communication are open, and collaborating with other humans. So that's something you can really lean into. Another thing that could be very helpful at this period is breath work. So just a simple breath. So for example, breathing in for 4, holding for 4, and then breathing out for 6. So ensuring that the out breath is longer than the in breath actually calms the nervous system. Now you can actually increase the breath in to say 6, the hold to 6, and then the breath out could be 8. So having that longer breath out really helps to calm the nervous system and to take us out of a sympathetic nervous system more into a parasympathetic or a rest and digest nervous system. So we're obviously going to make better choices and be more responsive rather than more reactive if we're in a calm nervous system. So that's something that I really encourage you to do. Work with your breathing in this period for the next, 12 to 15 hours before the moon moves into Cancer. Now, when the moon moves into Cancer, I'm going to share the chart with you. We're going to be able to tap into greater levels of intuition. Now, something I remember from being in the floods myself is that though it was very scary, now the moon's going to move into Cancer early hours of Saturday morning. Let me make sure that's correct. Early hours of Saturday morning. We will be able to tune in to our intuition. The moon in Cancer is very protective, okay? It means that we are likely to come together and to be perhaps a little bit less in our heads and a little bit more in our hearts. So this is something positive. Of course, it's a very emotional place for the moon. And so you might notice, strong emotions coming up. You might feel sad. But traditionally, the moon is quite strong in Cancer, so this is a good time to band together. I really recommend if you are, in a living situation with someone who is toxic or problematic, that you get out and go to a safe place. When I was in the floods myself, I was stuck in a house with someone who was very toxic, and it was very disruptive and unsettling for me, and I couldn't get out for a few days. But I mean, I did survive, and you too will survive. I just want to like send my love out to all of you because, um, you know, it's interesting with the square to the nodal axis. There is this real letting go, especially with the South Node. It's connected to letting go and surrender. So when you have done as much as you can to really ensure the safety of yourself and those around you, you just need to really surrender to nature and um, and just be responsive rather than reactive. Now, I'll just share the chart with you as we go through the weekend. Here we go. So now the moon has moved into Cancer early hours of Saturday morning. Now, we may have a little bit of a lull here while the moon is away from Saturn. It's no longer in an aspect to Saturn. And it's not yet in an aspect to Mars. Okay, so there could be a little bit of a quiet period overnight, like early hours of the morning into the early morning. But as that moon continues to move through, we might see an intensification late on Saturday. So when we see the moon coming up to within, 7 degrees, it might be that we see greater flooding or rising water levels that are substantial. This is because Mars is traditionally connected to catastrophe and chaos. And when the moon makes its application, we could notice, especially in this water sign, Cancer, we could notice that we see Yeah, we see a lot of water. So just get to high ground and make sure you have a plan. Now, as the moon moves through, so currently we're in Saturday night, the moon is going to start to apply closely to Mars. Now, in traditional astrology, we tend to pay a special attention when the moon is within 3 to 4 degrees of conjunction. Now, that means that Sunday morning could also be a period which we, might highlight with a bit of a red flag. So don't sort of what's it called? Don't become complacent on Sunday. I encourage you to be aware and be mindful and be proactive. We have got Mars also in a trine to Saturn. I've seen some interesting patterns. I've been looking at different cyclones and natural disasters, and I'll share this in a separate video. But there is a connection between the planet Saturn and the planet Mars, or the planet Saturn and the planet Jupiter. When these planets get together, they have incredible energy. And though it's a trine, trines can just indicate stagnation or, something like, because we're dealing with a trine in water signs, this could indicate stagnation of water channels. So perhaps, the water is not able to get back to the sea because there could be blockages in the waterways, or there could be rising rivers, which is what happened with me. All of the drains were blocked, and so we couldn't actually get them to decrease. And then, so I recommend, if you can, ensure that your drains in your garden are open as much as possible, but also really just understand that, if the water levels do rise, you need to be high up as possible. Okay. And so yeah, we've got those things coming together. Now, I do want to also share with you the final kind of changes. So the moon's going to conjoin with Mars. This is going to be on Sunday. You can see we've got the moon and Mars at 17 degrees of Cancer. It's very interesting that I think it was the Cyclone Wanda, had a connection of, I think Saturn was at the same degree. I'll share that in a separate video, but I've seen a lot of interesting connections. But I see this here, this Moon, Mars, and Saturn configuration, really just intensifying the amount of water. The Sun is also conjunct Saturn, and so that's one of our luminaries, conjunct Saturn, um, which, can bring fear, as Saturn can be connected to fear. So it's important to do your best to try and, be positive, be proactive, and to take action. The moon with Mars definitely provides energy, okay? Energy to take action. It's important to let your emotions flow, and then to make, to take your plan and put that into action. Now, thankfully, the moon will move through Mars. Okay, now this could intensify storms and things because Mars does that. But as the moon moves through Mars, it'll start to separate. Now, I'd like to see Mars at least 5 degrees away from the moon. Oh, sorry, the moon at least 5 degrees away from Mars. So, by the time we get to late Sunday night, I would like to think that that this will start to break up. And this does seem to be a similar sort of theme to what the news is saying at the moment. I'm hoping that by the time this moon separates, at least by the early hours of Monday morning, that this should um, be calming down. So I hope that was interesting for anyone who's interested in charts and astrology. I know it's a lot for people who don't really understand astrology, but I'm hoping that it was practical enough, and that seeing the planets moving kind of helps to make a bit of sense of it. Now, I'm going to share this video. Please, I know that I use words like catastrophe and chaos and things. These words are connected to the symbolism of the planets, but there is also definitely different extremes of such things. We know that a lot of this, especially right now as the moon's in Gemini, a lot of this sense of chaos and fear, it's based on an unknown. Like it's kind of a psychological fear right now. Okay, so remember to calm the nervous system. If you've got any lavender oil, or you've got any, if you've got a bathtub, make yourself a bath, do some breathing, because the amount of chaos, that is experienced is going to be a lot less if your inner system, your inner world is calmer. So yeah, I wish you all the best. I'm thinking of you a lot, all of you, and I feel like this is really triggering me as well. But um, I do see that with these catastrophes um, and these natural disasters, people really come together, and I've never seen such beautiful community and kindness as when, I was caught up in the last flood. So um, we didn't have the same foresight as you guys have now. So I do just wish you well. Use your knowledge as power and just do your best to regulate yourself. All right, I'm going to share with you another video about some common things I've seen in different natural disasters and cyclones. If that's interesting to you, feel free to watch it. If it's triggering for you, then perhaps wait a while to watch that until things die down. All right, all the best.